Good afternoon. My name is John Williamson, photographer and product evangelist for Profoto. Today we're going to talk about the basic building blocks of studio photography. But before we begin, if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them into your browser, little box below the video screen there, and we'll try to get some of those answered while we go. Also, because of bandwidth, if anybody has any issues viewing this, or if you get disconnected or have to leave, the video will be available in a couple of days for download. So to get started, when we talk about studio photography, we really talk about two different things: making people look and feel their very best. Making somebody look their very best is an understanding of the basic elements. It's understanding the different equipment and types of light that we're going to use. So today, we're going to go over our main light, what it is and how we use it, our fill light, and our rim light. The other part is, how do we actually use those to make our subject look good? That's different lighting patterns. There are actually 6 different styles or patterns of light: short, broad, split, Rembrandt, and butterfly. So we're going to go through those and kind of show you how to use them in conjunction with different body types and how to make people look their very best. So I'm going to start by introducing Hope. Hope's our model for today. And I'm going to start off with short lighting. Short lighting is described as the light from our main light source illuminating the side of our subject's face that's away from the camera. So the first thing we want to do is set a height of our main light source. For my main light today, I'm using a 2 foot by 3 foot softbox. So the height of our main light, I like to determine the height based on the color of our subject's eyes. What that means is, I'm going to start by taking my light source up way higher than what it needs to be, and then just slowly lower it into position until I see the saturation, the color of the subject's eyes pop. The height is different. I've heard every sorts of rule of thumb on how to set the height, but really, the height should be set for your specific model that you're shooting. So by setting it, going slowly down until you see the eyes pop, make sure it's in the right spot for that particular person. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise this up. Now I'm just slowly going to lower this into position. Right about there. So look at the color of our eyes from here versus if I just move it 4 or 5 inches up. The lighting pattern itself looks good, but the color actually changes. So we're just going to lower that right there. That's setting the height. And remember, studio lighting is easy. It's very simple. So what we're going to do is not overcomplicate things. The next step is, now that we have the height set, is to actually feather the light. Make small horizontal movements and watch how the highlights and the shadows change on a subject's face. So if you watch our face here, as we move this slowly from one side to the other. Right there, lock that in. What you'll notice is that the highlights and shadows are changing on their subject's face. That's important. We've all heard the phrase, we have to learn to see the light. But it's just as important to learn to see the shadows. In photography, it's our responsibility to take a 3-dimensional object and capture it on a 2-dimensional media. The only way that we're going to do that and make that image look like it has depth and dimension, looks like it has life to it, is by having highlights and shadows. Think of it this way: highlights project and shadows recede. That gives you that contrast, that separation to give your image life. So now that we have our main light set, what I want to do is go ahead and set our exposure. To do this, I like to use the Sekonic 758 light meter. So we're going to set this. So I'm shooting at ISO 100 at 125th of a second at f5.6. And again, keep in mind, what we're doing is we're demonstrating the short lighting pattern. So the light from my main light source is illuminating the side of my subject's face that's away from the camera. So hope, and have you turn your chin this way. Turn your hips more towards the light. Right, there you go. Look right back towards me. Perfect, great. One more. Excellent, thanks. It's important to know that with all these different styles of light, we have the different patterns to affect the way people look differently at the image. For instance, with short lighting, since highlights project, we're actually bringing the viewer's attention to a smaller portion of the subject's face. So if you have somebody with a nicer, like if you take my picture, I have a round face with a bigger beard. If you use short lighting, you're actually illuminating a smaller portion of the face. When that happens, you draw attention away from the sides. It actually has a slimming effect. So let's take a look at the image. So you notice here that we have our highlights are on this side of the face, and they're transitioning over into the shadowed areas here. Now, if we want to bring up these shadows just a little bit, what we're going to do is actually introduce called a fill light. See, our main light only has two responsibilities. Our main light is responsible for setting our exposure. And it's also responsible for determining the lighting pattern that we're using. The fill light only has one responsibility. It's in charge of controlling our lighting ratio, or the contrast in the image. Lighting ratios are nothing more than the difference in exposure values from our highlights and our shadows. So for today, what I'm going to use for a fill light is a reflector. I have a white reflector set up on a 8-foot light stand with a reflector arm. The stand of the arm just helps hold it into position so I don't have to have an assistant or somebody else helping me to hold it up. Remember, anytime you use a reflector, it becomes another light source. So we have to position it so that when it covers our subject, we're not casting any erroneous shadows on there, which is why I like to use the white reflector. The white has almost like a matte surface on it. It's considered diffused lighting. You also have silver, gold, sun silver. All those are more specular highlights, or have more specular lighting to it. So you'll see a lot more of the pinpoint reflections of light in your subject. So same thing, I'm going to set it up, and I'm just going to move it into position, and I can actually see from the modeling light how that affects on my subject. I don't want to bring it too close to kill all the shadows. I'll come in here right about here. I'm going to lock that into position. Keep in mind, anytime you set up your lights or a reflector, when we use light stands, there's only 3 legs. So it's always good to make sure that we have the heaviest part, either the reflector or the softbox, actually coming out over one of those legs. It's real easy as you're making adjustments to have it end up in between 2 legs. Just makes it more prone to tipping over. We added a light source, we added a reflector. I still want to come in and double check my exposure to make sure we're still on. We're still at f5.6. Right here. Turn your chin this way just a little bit. Perfect. Right here. Great. Remember, when you're using a reflector, there's a saying, the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection. It's like when you're shooting pool. If you hit a cue ball on a rail, it's going to leave the rail at the same angle it arrived at. If you keep that in mind, that'll help you when positioning the reflector in the right position. So let's take a look at the image here. So you notice we still have our highlights, we're still using the short lighting pattern, but we've brought up the shadows area. The shadowed areas still have definition, they still have detail in them, so we want that highlights and the shadows, but we didn't overly destroy them. The last thing that we're going to do now is we're going to add a rim light. For the rim light today, I'm using a Profoto 1x4 softbox with a soft grid. See, softboxes throw light in about a 105-degree angle. And when we're lighting something from behind for a rim light, what we don't want is that light to spill over and cast get little specks of light on the face where they don't belong. So to control that, I'm using a 1 foot by 4 foot softbox and then adding the soft grid, which takes it from a 105-degree angle down to just a 40-degree angle. This helps concentrate the light right in the back of your subject. Whenever you set up lights in your studio, it's always a good idea to set them up one at a time. So what I'm going to do is, using the Air remote, I'm actually going to turn off the modeling light on my main light source, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on my rim light in the back. I'm going to go over here and just make a small adjustment and make sure that this is aimed right at the back of my subject. Now Hope's hair right now is completely covering her face from my perspective, which is really going to help me out here because I know that if I could see her nose from here, I have a chance of hitting it with the light. But if it's completely hidden by the hair, it makes your adjustments back here just a little bit easier. Now what we're going to do is come here in the forward position, and you can see where that light is hitting. It's coming all the way down her arm and all the way down her hair at the front here, giving that separation from the background. Now that that's in position, I'm going to turn my main light, modeling light back on, and we're going to take another meter reading. So my main light's still at f5.6. Now when I set the power for my rim light, oftentimes if a subject has dark hair, I might want the power from my rim light to be about a stop brighter than my main. But since Hope actually has like a dirty blonde hair, we're going to set it about a stop under my main light so I don't completely blow out the definition and the details. So using my light meter, I'm about f4.7, so what I can do then with the Air remote is just lower that by a couple tenths of a stop. So I'm at f4 here, I'm at f5.6 on my main. So that's going to give me that one stop difference from my rim light. Right here. Good. One more shot. Look right here. Good. Keep in mind, these are just the basic elements of studio photography. It's by no means a complete guide to how to take the perfect portrait. These are the building blocks. So use these different tools with what you're already doing to help augment and to build your skills as a studio photographer. So let's take a look at how the rim light looks here. So now we're starting to look a little bit more like a finished image in the studio. We're still using the short lighting pattern, but now you can see this definition back in her hair and the separation from her hair in the background and the little accent light here on the shoulder. This is rim lights I use in place of like a traditional hair light. It becomes really almost necessary to use one when you're shooting a subject with really dark hair against a dark background. What happens is if the exposure value of the background matches too closely to the hair, you'll lose the top of your subject's head into the background. And you need to make sure you maintain that definition. And a rim light really helps to do that. So that's short lighting. What we want to move on to now is into broad lighting. Broad lighting is described as the light from our main light source illuminating the side of our subject's face that's towards the camera. So when we make this adjustment, what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my reflector down. Anytime I change lighting setups, I always want to just start from scratch. Now Hope, if I can have you turn your hips the other way. Great, just like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move it's not just a matter of changing your subject's position. We're going to move our main light source a little bit more in front. And again, her eyes stayed at the same level. I still want to reset my lights. We call it re-zeroing everything. I'm going to take it all the way back up and just start feathering it up and down and then from side to side again. Again, as I move the light, as I move it down into position, what I'm looking for is the color from her eyes to pop. You're going to see that position in there. Then, do the side to side. I'm watching for the shadows. right there. Once the main light is set, you move over to your fill. I'm going to put this into position. Again, I'm going to come over here and watch, and you can actually physically see the shadows change on your subject's face as you get them into position. Again, we don't want that reflector too close to kill all those shadows. We don't want the lighting to be flat. So the last step is take our meter reading. I'm at 56.3, so what I'm actually going to do is lower the energy on my main light a couple stops. I'm at 5.6 here. And I'm at F4 in the back, so that's perfect. And again, this is for broad lighting. Let's see, if you come right here. Turn your chin this way just a little bit. Tilt your head back this way. Good. Good. All right, now if we look at our screen, what we're going to see is we have the light from our main light source illuminating the subject on the side of the face that's towards the camera. But if you look, this eye right here actually went a little bit dark. I want to make sure that I maintain the same luminosity, the same level of exposure in both of the eyes. So I'm going to come back in front here, and I want to readjust this light to make sure that it's feathered and at the right height so that both eyes are illuminated. Lock that in. Readjust this just a little bit. Good, right there. Anytime you make a change, you want to reconfirm your exposure. Good. We'll come in here again. Right here. Good. All right, so that looks a lot better on the screen here. So if you look, oh, we'll let this load here a little bit. So if you look here, we have both eyes now have a even exposure value for each one. The side of the face that's facing the camera is being lit by our main light source. You'll want to use broad lighting if you have a subject that might have a very long, thinner face. So that would help fill it out, make them look their best. So the next style of light that we're going to move on to is called loop lighting. Now loop lighting is described as the light from our main light source casting a shadow from the nose with just a little loop on the side. Now, since we just have a small little loop from the shadow of the nose, that means that our subject is being much more evenly lit. That's important because understanding how light reacts to the skin and how light reacts to different textures. What happens is, since my light on loop lighting, I'm going to be lighting my subject much more direct. If there are any imperfections in the skin, if you have wrinkles or if you have acne, you're not giving them any opportunity to cast a shadow. So you're drawing tension kind of away from them. Whereas with short lighting, if my subject is facing the light and looking back towards the camera, light's just skimming across this part of the face. If you have light hitting your subject at a much more severe angle, every imperfection is going to cast a shadow. So if you have a highlight and a shadow and a highlight and a shadow, you're creating texture on the skin. So understanding how light reacts will play a big part in you deciding how you're going to light them. So again, I'm going to re-zero this. Just going to move this out for a second. And have you turn your hips straight on. What I want to do is position this so that my main light is just creating a small shadow on the side of the nose. So. Right about there. Then I'm going to come in with my reflector again, doing the same thing. Perfect. Great. We're going to confirm our exposure. At 5.6. Perfect. So like I said, loop lighting is a much more even style of lighting. So this is great for people who want to maybe hide some blemishes on the skin, such as acne or wrinkles or whatnot. So because this is more evenly lit, our softbox has to be more in front of our subject. So I'm going to step in front of the camera for just a second. So when I take the picture, it's going to be more straight on. Good. Right here? Perfect. All right, so let's take a look at the screen here. So right here with the loop lighting, oh, we're still going to let this load. What we're looking for is that shadow right there from the nose, just coming onto the face just a little bit. We still have definition, we still have highlights and shadows, but the whole of the face is much more evenly lit than it was with broad or with short lighting. And when we talk about quality of light, a lot of times what we're referencing is the softness of the light. I talk about the angle of the light and how that can help to hide some imperfections. Well, so can the difference between hard and soft light. See, a hard light source will actually cast a sharp, crisp, defined line. So the shadows coming from a hard light are much more defined and pronounced, whereas shadows from a soft light source are much more evenly transitioned. So you're drawing tension away from them. There's only two things that make light soft: size and distance. The bigger your light source is, the softer it is. The closer your light source is to your subject, the softer it is. So keeping those two things in mind will help you when positioning your light. The different styles of light that you choose, where you position them, that's all part of the art of studio lighting. I'm a big nerd and I'm a geek. Every time I meet somebody, I meet them in a bar, I shake their hand somewhere, I can't help but look at them and think about how they would look their, how would I light them? How would I take their picture? I love photography, I love what I do. It's just, it becomes a part of who I am when I meet somebody for the first time for a consultation. I'm already deciding how I'm gonna photograph them. So all these things, like I said, play a part in building the foundation of studio photography. So the next part that we're going to talk about is called Rembrandt lighting. Now Rembrandt lighting is obviously named after the artist Rembrandt. See, all these different styles of light, there wasn't some big consortium of photographers that got together to try to teach studio lighting. These are all patterns of light. These are all patterns of how to illuminate somebody that have been passed down for centuries. The story goes that Rembrandt had just a trapdoor that opened in his basement and allowed just a small bit of light in. And the other story is he just hung a lantern up. Whatever the case, that was his style. And when you see it, it's very indicative of the artist. Rembrandt lighting is described as a light from our main light source casting a small triangle of light underneath the eye on the fill light side. Like loop lighting and Rembrandt lighting, these are just the basics I'm showing you. There are variations of all these. So there's short Rembrandt and broad Rembrandt. There are different ways of doing it. I'm showing you just the basic principles of these lighting patterns. So a lot of people ask, how would they learn to light? You know, there's tons of books. Learn from as many different places as you can. Add that information to your own philosophy on how you shoot. One great way to do it is to go to a museum and look at these paintings and how they chose to represent their subjects. These are master artists who literally could take months to choose how they were going to light somebody and how they wanted them to look. So it's a great place to start learning. So for Rembrandt light, Rembrandt it's a very hard style of light. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to remove my softbox. We're going to shoot more of a bare bulb style. Now the D1s actually have a recessed flash tube that sits inside of its own internal reflector. So it makes controlling the light a lot easier. I'm going to take this up And again, what I'm looking for is that small triangle of light underneath the eye on the fill light side. Right here? Perfect. So this right here is what I'm looking for. What makes this so much different than these other styles that we've talked about is that the eyes are in the shadowed. The eyes aren't the most important thing here. You'll notice also I took away my reflector. We're not going to use a fill light here. Rembrandt light is known for a very hard, contrasty, edgy light. Here, find our exposure. 5.6. So we're at f5.6.3, so I'm actually just going to lower this light. So I lowered my main light by 3/10 of a stop, so I got an f5.6 reading for my main light. And I'm still at f4 for my rim light. And again, we're going to turn this off, confirm what that looks like. Then I want to turn off my main light. Confirm where I'm checking where the light for my rim light is hitting my subject. So let's turn that modeling light back on. Perfect. Serious, don't smile. Now, I personally don't use Rembrandt lighting very often. It's a very stoic form of lighting. It's a very serious form of lighting. It's also considered a masculine style of light. One of the reasons I choose not to use it very often, if you look at Hope, now Hope, can you smile real big for me? Rembrandt lighting never looks very good when the subject smiles. So anytime you see this, you'll see a very serious picture, which lends itself typically to executive portraits. That's a good instance of when I might choose to use this style. So let's take a look here. So this is a really good classic example of Rembrandt light. We have this triangle of light right here underneath the eye on the fill light side. You know, so this eye is completely shaded. This eye is just barely catching a little bit of light. Again, Rembrandt lighting is a very hard, edgy style of light. So the last pattern that we're going to talk about is butterfly lighting. Now, butterfly lighting is described as the light from our main light source illuminating our subject so the shadow from the nose is cast right above the upper lip. What happens, because the light's above coming in, we're getting a more symmetrical style of lighting. Butterfly lighting is considered a feminine style of lighting. So what's going to happen is you're going to accentuate cheekbones, you're accentuating the jawline. What happens is the shadow from the jaw is cast onto the neck, accentuating this line, accentuating this in here. For this reason, what I'm going to do here is, let me lower my main light source here. I'm actually going to use another 1 foot by 4 foot softbox as my main light. I'm going to use this in the horizontal position. One of the reasons being that with this 1 foot distance right here will allow a greater fall off down onto my subject. Remember, anytime you're doing a portrait, the mask of the face, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, that's the most important. With the concentration, for me, should be on the eyes. The eyes are the key to the portrait. So if I can create a natural vignette where the eyes and the mask of the face is the brightest part of the portrait, I'm already one step ahead. That's where the subject's or the viewer's attention is going to be drawn in the photograph. So we're going to snap this on here. So whenever I with Profoto, I actually have a graduated scale here on the side where I can choose to put the ring. On the D1s, I like to have it in position 6. This is going to make that front plate flush in the softbox, evening the light out across the strip bank. Because what I'm going to do is, with a 1x4, I'm only going to shoot with 2/3 of the box. So that'll allow me to get out from behind the light stand and shoot from the side. Just like any style, I'm going to raise this up. Look right here at me. Good, right there. Lock that in position. Again, look how we're accentuating the cheekbones, and the shadow from the jaw is being cast onto the neck. We're going to do a meter reading. F489, 489. So I'm actually just going to raise the power of my main light by 1/10 of a stop. Do it 2/10 of a stop. There we go. We raised it by just 2/10 of a stop, so we're at F5.6. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the modeling light off from this, and I'm just going to check and make sure. And this is actually coming just a little bit more forward for this. So the light was illuminating the front of her hair just a little bit too much. Just going to move that from behind. Always confirm the lighting from your shooting position. That looks good. I'm still getting the light coming down her arm there. And again, since this is a very symmetrical style of lighting, I'm going to step in front of the camera for just a second while I'm shooting, because I want to get this square on. This is one of the few styles I like to shoot with the subject looking right at the camera. Oh, let's turn our modeling light back on there. There we go. Big smile. Good. Now again, butterfly lighting is a very feminine style. It's a really good style of lighting to use when you're shooting like high school seniors. It really brings out that shape of the feminine face. So let's take a look. So you see the eyes right here have that straight line, the reflection from our 1x4 softbox. We have the shadow from the nose right above her upper lip. The cheekbones are nice and accentuated right here, as well as the jawline. Now the one thing that I sometimes like to do with butterfly lighting is put in a reflector, but instead of using that white reflector that had a nice diffused light to it, I'll use a gold or a soft silver. It's a gold and silver mix. That will add a warm glow coming up on our subject. So on the back of our white reflector is actually a gold color. And what I'm going to do is put this right underneath. Now what can happen is if you get this too high, is sometimes you can blow out all of those shadows and lose definition. We still want to maintain highlights and shadows for the portrait. I'll grab my meter. Once in position, I'm at 5.6.4. So using the controls in the back of the air remote, I'm just going to lower this by half a stop. F5.6. Double check this one. F4. And again, I apologize. I'm going to step in front of the camera here. Take this. Beautiful. Looks good. Perfect. Just because this is typically used as a style of light that we shoot females with, a feminine style of light, doesn't mean that you can't shoot a man with this. But know why you're using it, understand the effect it's going to give when you do choose to do that. So let's take a look at the difference here with the reflector. See how it warmed everything up? It warmed all the shadows up, gave a golden glow to the bottom of her, for her cheek here and onto her neck. So it adds just a different dimension to the lighting. And guys, that's it for the basic fundamentals of studio lighting. What I want to do now is answer some of the questions that you guys have typed into the bottom of your screen. So what I'm going to do is get out iPad here. So yeah, for the first question here, wouldn't butterfly lighting be considered more clamshell lighting? So clamshell lighting is a really good technique, And that's where you have your main light source above like this and a secondary light source below your subject coming up. So absolutely, when you're using the reflector in this position, it is a clamshell lighting setup. So the difference being on this that I'm actually casting a warmer glow because of the different color of reflector. A lot of times you'll see me do this with 2 strip banks coming up, so you don't get the warm glow, but you do fill in the shadows. It's really important to make sure you pay close attention to different power levels of the lights. That has a neat effect because when you look at the catch lights, it's 2 horizontal bars on the eyes. Just something different and unique that not a lot of people offer some of their clients. So a question here is, could you sync at a higher speed with Profoto Air Remote, let's say for a fashion location shoot? The sync speed is actually going to be determined more from your camera. So a lot of the new cameras, so I shoot a Nikon D3. The D3 I can sync at 250th of a second with the Profoto D1s, and that's fine. I don't get any of that shadowing on the back from the shutter closing too soon. But this is more specific to your camera. So make sure when you're using that you read your owner's manual, find out where your sync speed is for your camera. Okay, so one question is the light meter. Does it work without a sync cable? What I'm doing in here is the 758 has a strobe mode, and as I'm holding in the button on the side, I'm tripping it with an air remote. So I'm taking the air remote and hitting the test button. When it flashes, the light meter picks up the flash, and it reads that exposure from the flash. So the question here is, what is the distance of the light in the reflector away from the subject? So again, the distance that you choose to put your main light source to the subject is determined on a couple factors. One that we talked about is the quality of light, the softness of the light. The closer we bring it to the subject, the softer it's going to be. But also, light up close is going to fall off really fast. The more you back the light up, the more it's going to cover your subject. So what you need to look at is how much coverage area you need to have. So that's called your light depth of field. So we're just shooting a head and shoulder shot right here. So I don't need to cover much of her body. But say we're doing short lighting, and if I want to do a full body, I need to back my light up so that my exposure is even across her whole body. So as we back it up, I may need to go to a larger softbox in order to maintain that same quality of light. Now, for the reflector, it's the exact same thing. As soon as the light hits it and bounces off, it becomes a light source. So we need to use this like we would a light source. If our main light source is a soft light, what I don't want is a hard specular light coming off of my reflector. The two are going to contradict each other. So if I'm doing portrait, nice, tight, intimate portrait in the studio, I'm going to use that white side because it's going to give me more of the diffused reflection. The distance is going to be all about the distance of your main light. The further I bring my main light back, because of the composition, I may need to throw that light a little further. With that in mind, silver or gold, those specular surfaces, are going to throw light a lot further than what the white is. Good question. What's my favorite color backdrops for portraits? Today I'm using gray, and actually to answer your question directly, my favorite color is white. And the reason is you can actually control what color the background is by how close your setup is to the background. So if I had this setup with a white background, we would get a very light gray, almost white background. But as we move the light in the subject further away, that background's going to go darker and darker. So with a white background, I can shoot white. I can even add a couple lights and make it high key. Or I can pull my subject further away from the background and shoot with a black, make the white black. So for me, white's my favorite. It's really versatile to use. Oh, that's a really good question. In fact, Joe and I were talking about this earlier. The question is, how do you account for overlapping lighting when setting exposure? So we were just having this conversation. On the light meters, you actually have this dome right here. So you can position the dome out, Or I could turn this and I can recess that dome. For me, my school of thought, my way of thinking is, I'm shooting a three-dimensional subject, I want to use a three-dimensional surface. And this is great for when you're setting your final exposure. You need to set your exposure for the light bouncing off the background, the light bouncing off the walls. All the light that's hitting your subject, you need to account for when you're setting your exposure. Now the neat thing is, when you recess it, you can get more of just a targeted exposure. So if I take a meter reading with this recess, it's going to give me just this one softbox. So it's a little bit more directional, a little bit more targeted on there. As far as the overlapping lighting, again, when this is out, when you're doing your final meter reading, you are accounting for all the light hitting that area, and that's what you're setting your exposure for. So, the question here is, how do you feel about the beauty dish and other hard reflectors? The last couple seminars we've done has been with soft boxes and soft lighting. I was trying to demonstrate the fundamentals of studio lighting. So what we're going to do is, and in fact I invite you all to join our next webinar. We have one coming up in October, we have another one in December. We're going to have a webinar just on alternative lighting modifiers. It's all going to be about hard light. So for this stuff, we've kept it pretty soft, we've kept it all pretty close. The next one, we're going to go into beauty dishes, our soft light reflector, magnums, how to use grid spots to give you kind of a different alternative look to some of the portraits. Guys, I just want to remind you that if you missed something or you want to view this again, it will be available for download in just a couple of days. And again, I invite you all to come and join us in October and December for our next webinars. Thank you all for coming. Have a great day.